everyone's doing well out there today. Another minute or two, and I'm gonna jump in and get started. I appreciate everyone that is checking, that is giving me some time, checking out the live stream. Going to build a Next.js application today using the latest version, Prisma as the ORM. We'll use a postgresql database, and at the end we may deploy it. I'm not 100% sure just yet, but ultimately we're just going to build a full stack crud app, just something simple to have a full stack application, a simple to do app, but we'll add a little bit of interactivity to it with some drag and drop and a few other things. So it'll be a fun build. Nothing too challenging, but something that's fairly interesting, if you will. So with that said, let's see, I'm almost ready here. I want to make sure my audio is good. Second here. I appreciate everyone stopping by. If you don't mind, just let me know where you're stopping by from. Excuse me. A little cold today. Feels like. So I think we'll kick things off by installing the Nextjs project. So in the terminal, I type the command npx create next app at latest space and dot. And for the project, we'll say yes to TypeScript, yes to ESLint, yes to Tailwind, no to SRC, yes to the app router, yes to the turbo pack, and no to the import alias, and just give it a few seconds to finish installing. Hope everyone's doing okay. Just building a full stack Next.js application. I appreciate everyone stopping by. Would love to know where you are stopping by from. Almost finished installing here. Hello. Yes, enjoying a nice day off from work. I like to think it is well deserved. Tend to give a pretty good day's effort. So whenever I can get a day off, I am very much appreciative of that. Yep, how was yours? Nice. Nice. Yep. Yeah, just a full stack Next.js application using Prisma as the ORM and Postgres database via Vercel. Yep. That is absolutely correct. So now we can close the terminal for now. In the package.json, I'm going to paste in a package manager override to distinguish the package manager. That way I won't have any compatibility concerns as we begin to build out the app with the dependencies. Yes. It's a pretty good day. No, didn't have to do anything very demanding. Enjoyed the day off from work, so that was always good stuff. Made a couple TikToks earlier, so figured I'm gonna jump on this, and then I'm building a larger project that I'll preview. I actually may start working on it tomorrow on the stream, but basically a ordering application as if I was building it for a local business. Basically, it's a little seafood market where you can, get fried seafood and rice and fries and chicken wings, just a whole bunch of food like that. So building a full application for a restaurant of that sort that's going to consist of the front end UI and also a back end admin dashboard. We'll integrate Stripe, have a little fun with it. Yep. That's correct. Yep. Okay. So now I'm just going to do some basic cleanup in the global.css. Going to remove the boiler code and add the height and width of the application and set it to 100%. The overflow on the X will be hidden, and I'm going to set the default text size to small. We'll close this out, and then in the page.tsx, I'm going to just remove the boilerplate code from it. Replace that div with the new div of home page. We'll remove the image import. And now we have a simple, basic Next.js app with very limited boiler code. So good there. I think first we'll kick things off by installing Prisma. Back in the terminal, we'll go npm -d for dependency Prisma. Give it a second to install. Then we'll need the Prisma client once this is finished. Yep. Yeah, just a full stack Next app. Simple to-do list website. We're just going to add in drag and drop. So you can drag and drop the to-dos, but that's basically it. And then next I want to install the Prisma client, which is npm prisma/client. This gives us the ability to use Prisma throughout the app, give us access to whatever models that we build within the schema.prisma file, and also a lot of built-in methods provided by Prisma just to make our development experience easier. Excuse me. And then finally we'll run the command npx prisma init to initialize Prisma. This will give us a directory named Prisma and a schema.prisma file and a .env file and a few other things, basically setting us up for success as it relates to using Prisma. now is a good time to go ahead and set up our database. And as I mentioned, we'll be using Vercel. I'm pretty sure all of you have a Vercel website or a Vercel account. And all you need to do is just log in and you'll be redirected to your team overview page. From there, I'm going to click on settings. If it allows me to, there we go. Well, excuse me, storage. And we'll just click create database. Neon serverless Postgres, then click continue. We'll select the recommended region. Continue. Oh, I like the way that continue animation popped up. That was pretty cool. And then we'll just name this database. We'll name it Live To Do App. And click create. And now we have successfully created a database. We'll click done. Then scroll down. We need to get the .env file. Here we go. So maybe it's just under quick starts. I just didn't see it, sorry. We'll click copy snippets. We can close this for now. We'll go to the .env file. Let me move this back. Go. And we'll highlight everything, delete it, paste in the code that we copied from the .env, excuse me, from the Postgres database dashboard. That code this is basically what's going to allow us or give us access to connect to our database. This is sensitive data, so you definitely want to make sure it's not accessible on any public files, GitHub, or anywhere else. And we'll save it, close it out. And then now we're ready to shift our focus to the schemas. But before then, let's go ahead and add a function that will give us the ability to use Prisma throughout all of the pages in the application. Yep, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm going to get more consistent. I set some goals for myself. I enjoy doing this. I just allow work and life to kind of take over, but I need to be a little bit more disciplined. I intend to. And plus, I may start learning something new and may start live streaming it, and if you're interested in learning it, we can spend time studying and learning together. But definitely going to get on more and do a lot of different things and connect with everyone that may be interested in my perspective. Yep. Thank you, I appreciate that. I genuinely do. Yep. So in the root of our project, we're going to add a directory named lib, and inside of it a file named prisma.ts. I'm going to paste in a function that basically gives us access to the Prisma client. And what this is doing is saying that if there is not a connection to our database, go ahead and establish one. And with a connection being established, we're going to get access to the Prisma client. That's going to do two things. It'll give us a consistent connection, and it'll also, and which will give us access to our schema models that we'll be using to organize the data in the database, and it'll also give us access to some additional methods to mutate the data as we are creating different CRUD capabilities or connection points throughout the application. So that is basically the purpose of this file. And we'll save it and close it out. Now we'll shift our focus to the models, which is inside of the Prisma directory. So we can remove this output because that doesn't accurately display our folder structure. And underneath the data source, we don't need to change anything within this object just for clarity, because we're already using a Postgres database, and it's going to use the database URL that's within the .env file. But what we do want to do inside of this file is add the models to organize our data. We're basically just going to have two main models. It will be, I think we'll name the first one maybe column, and the second one will be task. So we'll go model column, and we'll have a ID, which will be a string, at ID, at default, CUID, and we'll have a name of string. Then we'll go created at, will be date time, at default, now. Yep. And then we'll also capture the updated at, and that will be date time, and we'll just use the built-in at updated at. That'll take care of the second model. Will be a task model, and this will be just storing the task within the columns. The columns are going to have names that will represent what needs to get done, or the overall project, if you will. And then the task will be individual tasks that we need to complete that are within the model. So for this, we're going to just copy the ID because that will remain consistent. For this, we'll have a title, which will be a string. We'll also have is done, just in case we don't want to delete it, but we just want to show that we completed it. We'll have the ability to toggle. The initial state will be false. Let's slow down on my tab. We'll need to store the position of the task. This will be stored within the task models, and this will allow us to drag the item up and down. We'll set the default to 0. We'll capture the updated and created app. Be sure to store that. And then last but certainly not least, we'll need to have a relationship between the column and task. And remember, the column can have multiple tasks, so we'll store an array within column of tasks. So we'll start with the column and go task, and it will represent the task model. Then we'll go column ID, which will be a string. This is going to represent or help distinguish which column this task belongs to that we're creating. Then we'll go column. It will have that relationship of column. And we'll go add relation will be fields. In the fields, we'll have the column ID. The reference of it will be ID. And then last but not least, on delete, if we needed to delete this, we'll make sure that it is cascade. This looks good. And then at the bottom of this, I'm going to include the index. We'll go forget about IntelliSense every time. Column ID is done, and position. Click save. Hey, what's going on, my friend? Long time no talk to, man. You hadn't stopped by in a while. Nice to hear from you from time to time, my friend. As always, I appreciate the support. Absolutely do. Yeah, I know I was being funny, man. That was on me. I haven't been on in a while, so yep, that was on me. I deserve that, but it's all good. I'm here. I set some goals for myself, so usually when I give myself some benchmarks to hit, I don't miss. I take those things serious. Kind of builds a little character and keep a little self-discipline. You always want to make sure you remain in control of yourself and your habits. Otherwise, you allow anything to control you. You know what I mean? So that's kind of some things I've been working on and to make sure that I uphold to, if you will. But yeah, man, I always appreciate the support. I ain't going anywhere. I just let life kind of get in the way, if you will. But locked in and going to make the most of it and certainly do what I need to do. I'm thinking of learning cybersecurity through Coursera pretty soon. I'm thinking real hard about it. I'm kind of ready for another challenge, and it is of some interest to me. And if I do decide to do it, I'll live stream that journey so that if anyone is interested, feel free to join me. And I also thought about doing something where I go back and do some learning of some initial coding exercises and syntax and things like that for those that are, I know I have a lot of folks that support me that are just getting started, so if there's any interest in that, let me know. Someone gave me a great idea of hosting like a class, if you will. If that's something that that anyone is interested in, I'll be happy to do that as well. That could be fun. But yeah, I've been doing okay though. I appreciate you staying tuned and holding me accountable to being locked in. Yeah, I just happened to get a day off from work today, so I figured today will be a good day to start the habit. But ultimately, I need to make sure I'm doing it on days even when I work, because that's where the discipline is going to kick in. It's easy to do it when I don't have anything else to do, right? Is when you actually do have something to do and you got to be disciplined and lock in and do it. That's when the true character is built. So that's what I'll be working on. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, just a full stack application today. Something simple. We're gonna look to build something a little more complex here real soon. As a matter of fact, I think I might kick it off tomorrow for a few hours. It'll be multiple days because it's going to take a while to kind of build it out, but we'll talk about that later. Yep, so let's go ahead and push these changes to Postgres. So back in the terminal, we'll just type in npm exe prisma migrate dev and press enter. This is going to push those models that we just created to our Postgres database so that that data is persisted, and we'll be able to interact with it by making queries and mutations and all that fun stuff. For this, we're going to name the migration init. And if everything goes well, you should receive this beautiful green message saying that your database is now in sync with your schema. Prisma gives a very nice, lightweight interface to take a look at your database without actually using Vercel or whatever you're using to actually see your data, MongoDB, whatever. So I'm going to launch that just to make sure that everything did sync. So in the terminal, we'll type npx prisma studio and press enter. And the Prisma Studio is up on localhost 555 and it automatically loaded. And as you can see, we have the two models that we created, a column and a task. And our column has a name, a task field, which is an empty array, and the task itself has a field of title, is done, position, column ID, and which will represent the parent column that it belongs to. And then now at this point we can go ahead and spin up the application. So in a second terminal, we'll just type the command npm run dev and press enter. This should spin up our application on localhost 3000. So in a browser of your choice, we'll just go to localhost 3000, press enter. Perfect. So now we are ready to begin building out the actual application. Yes, ultimately it's going to be a to-do app that we can store our to-dos in columns as tasks, and we're going to add the main feature that we'll be adding in with this one is the ability to drag and drop the task within the column, just based on where we'll like to have them stored in order. Yep, that's exactly correct. Absolutely. So let me just confirm that my global styling is working. So in the page.tsx, I'll give it a class name, setting the height to full and the background color to amber 200. And with that, you see that the home page is now a amber color, so that is working perfectly. I think the first thing we'll do is just go ahead and kind of set up some of the initial layout so we can remove the background color. We'll keep the height to full. We'll set the width to the screen. No, let's go maximum width screen. I think we can leave it at that. We'll say flex and set the direction to column. I'll make the background color gray 50. Let's remove home page. we'll add a navigation here. Since this will be a single page application, no need of making it complicated. Inside of this nav, we'll add a div, a h1, and we'll say my to-do app. See it there. Give this a class name of font black. Set the text to 2XL. Save. Now we have my to-do app displayed a little more prominent on screen. Inside of this div, we'll give it a class name and set the margins to auto on the left and right, the maximum width of the screen to extra large, and set the width to full. I know it doesn't seem like much now, but let's check it out. And as you can see, it is taken perfectly because the width of my to-do is stopping right here, which is setting the width of it to extra large, and it is centered because we set the margins to auto. So great, we know that is working perfectly. I'm just going to rearrange this back. Give me a moment. All right, perfect. And then underneath the nav tag, this is where we'll have our actual board of to-dos. So we'll go div, we'll give it a class name of flex1, and we'll set the overflow to auto and padding on the Y of 4. And we'll just go board. We see that listed there. We can close this. So I'm going to bring the board in as a component. So within the root of our project, we'll add a folder named components. Inside of components, we'll add a file named board.tsx. What's going on, my friend? How you doing? I appreciate you stopping by. Absolutely. Yes, just a Nextjs application, a to-do app. Yep, with the ability to drag and drop the task within a column and reposition the order of things that need to get done. Yep, a simple CRUD app connected to Postgres via Prisma, and it is on Vercel. So everything is free, easy to set up, and I'll be sure to turn this into an actual video just in case there's anyone that is genuinely interested in building this and adding on to it. And if you do, I'd love to see it. If you could leave your GitHub repo if you do decide to do it in the comments once the video is posted, that would be pretty awesome. Yep. So within this is going to be a component that will pass in props, but I just want to get something on screen. So we'll go export default board, and we'll just, to have something on screen, we'll just return a div with the name of board. There we go. Go back to the page. At the top of it, we'll just import board, and be sure it's coming from @/component/board, and we can replace this text of board with the component that we just imported. Won't notice a difference right now, but let's just go back to it and add 123, or 132, excuse me, and we see 132 is now on screen. So We see that that component is imported and displaying as we desire. All right. Yep, that's correct. So now let's go ahead and start beginning out some of the design and the layout of this project. Basically what I want is a to-do list app that has columns that we can store different tasks that we need to get done. So we'll go back to the div. Let me add some styling to this now that I pay attention. It could use a little love, if you will. Looks a little rough, right? You can be honest. We'll go class name, go flex, items centered. Border bottom, we'll set the border to be dotted and set that color to neutral 200. Give this a little bit of height and set it to 16 and padding on the X of 4. And as you can see, it is now slightly indented, so that is great. Wow. Wow. Yeah, so this is just yeah, I promise I will. I got you. Just bear with me. I'm working on something right now and I'm gonna hold myself to going live and building it live and showing the whole process, but I got you. I intend to be much more consistent than I have been. Yep. Yeah, this is just a simple CRUD application, that's all. Nothing too heavy, but we're going to build something a little more complex though, starting tomorrow, and we'll build it out live together for those that may be interested in following along. I think it'll be a good project to put in your portfolio and genuinely something that you could use to take to a potential client. Maybe not an employer, but certainly a client. Could be an employer too, I guess, depending on their setup and their limitations. Yep. That's exactly right. Nope, not at all. Oh, man. Yep. Okay. All right, so that I think that's in a pretty good space now. Let's go back to the board .tsx file, and we'll just give this some initial styling. So the div, we're going to give it a class name of grid and go grid columns of 3 with a gap of 2. You can't see much right now, but let's change this, and just so we can see what it looks like, we'll go class name, put a div inside of this div with a class name. We'll go border dotted, a height of 300 pixels, and for right now we'll just set the background color to amber, and we'll go 1, save. Perfect. Alright, so this is basically what the board will look like. So that'll work. Alright, yeah, we can remove this. And we can remove this as well. I just want to make sure that it will look how I desire it. Set medium. We'll go grid columns 4 for this one since that one is 3. On large devices, we'll go to 5. Set the margins on the left and right to auto. And then we'll go max with screen. We'll set I think we set it to extra large. Probably could have made this a reusable component so that I didn't have to retype it, but it's okay. And then we'll set some padding on the X of 4. We can see the padding kick in. Doesn't look like much right now because I removed those additional divs that I had to kind of give a little visual, but it's okay. We're gonna add something back in just a moment. So I think the first thing we'll want to add is a button to actually add a column. And I'm going to install React icons. So in a terminal, we'll type, I think it's npm react icons. I need an I in there. No errors. Let's just check package.json to be sure. Yeah, it's right there. Perfect. So I'll begin by importing from React icons. I want F5, and I just want a FI plus. This will be used with our add a column button that we're going to add in just a moment. Yes, how you doing? Yes, I appreciate it. I appreciate the support. It's genuinely appreciated. Yes, just a full stack Nextjs app connected to Postgres via Prisma, a simple to-do app that'll give you the ability to organize your tasks within columns. That's basically it. Yep. Yeah, feel free. I appreciate it. So I think we're at a point now where we want to set up some actions. And these actions are going to give us the ability to interact with our database, kind of as the APIs, if you will, that we would have created in a traditional application, or if we were using backend APIs, we're at the point that we want to establish those. But because we're using server actions, we'll just go ahead and set that up now. So in the lib directory, we'll add a file named column actions.ts. First thing we'll need to do is mark this as use server so we can access it outside of this file. We'll then import Prisma. And this is the Prisma function that we added earlier. And it should be coming from /Prisma. The other import we're going to need is revalidate path. That's going to come from Nextcache. about that. Then we'll create our first function, which will be to create a column. So we'll go export async function, create task, which is the name of the function. We're going to pass in form data and then get access to the form data object. We're using beautiful TypeScript, so we'll need to add a little bit of additional syntax for type safety. When we are creating, task, create a column. Ooh, excuse me. Yeah, always. Okay, yep. So the first thing we want to do is gain access to that form data. So we'll create a const name raw and set it equal to form data.get, and what we'll be getting is the name. Then we'll create a const name and set it equal to type of. If that type is equal to a string, then we'll say raw.trim, or a empty string. And I have a syntax error, so we'll say const type of raw, excuse me. If raw is equal to a string, then we'll go ahead and pass in that data and trim off any white spaces. Otherwise, it will be an empty string. So we're good there. The next, we'll say if we did not receive a name, we just want to return. Then, if all goes well, we want to begin to mutate this data in the database. So we'll go await prisma .column, which is the name of the model .create, and we're going to use the data that we're receiving. The data should be a name. That's what we'll be storing. And then if everything goes as planned, we'll just revalidate the data by gaining access to revalidate path from Nextjs, just so it gives a real-time feel and just refreshes the content on screen without having to do a hard reset. So that is perfect. The other task or column that I want to go ahead and take care of while we're here is to get all. So we'll go export async function, get all columns. And with this, we can just say return, prisma dot column, and then we'll use the method of find many. We'll say ordered by, we'll set that to created at, and we'll gain access to ascending, and eventually we'll come back and we'll include the task, but for right now this is fine. So let's go ahead and put these two functions to the test and make sure that we have access to them as we desire. Thank you so much. Got any questions? Let me know. I'll be happy to answer them. So we'll go to the page.tsx file, and this is where we're going to, like I said, it's going to be a single page application. So this is where we're going to utilize all of our functionality. So we'll say import. On this one, we'll go get all columns, and that's going to come from @lib-actions, @lib-columns-actions, which is the name of the file. And to gain access to it, we'll just say const columns. Oh, I'm in the wrong one. It should be above the return. const columns is equal to await get all columns. We'll save it. And then what I want to do is, oh, I'm getting this error because I haven't defined await. So we'll add that in front of the function. So it should say export default async function. Click save. Now I know I'm going to get an error, but we're going to pass the columns inside of this board. So we'll go, we won't worry about it just yet because it's going to break the application. Let's go ahead and add the ability to add a column, and then we can check inside the database to make sure that it took, and then we'll display it on screen. So inside of board.tsx, we are going to have some client-side interactivity with this. So let's just go ahead and mark this as use client. With this file, we'll go ahead and import the function we created named create column, and that should be coming from @lib/column-actions. And with this one, yeah, this should be fine for right now. So what we want to do is have the ability to see the add column button on screen, and it's going to basically look just like a cell within our grid. So inside of this div, I'll just add a comment. There we go. Create, or we'll go add column button and function. We'll go form, and we'll use the action, and the action is going to be create column. I'm just going to give this a class name of column. Well, we'll style it later. But for right now, let's add a input. This will have a type of hidden, a name of hidden, no, I'm sorry, a name of name, tripping, and a value will be value of new column. Make sure that looks right. Yep. So now I'm going to use the button. So you can see something. We'll say add column. Let's bring in the fi plus. Okay. Go right here with a class name of flex item centered. Border of dotted. We'll set the border color to neutral 200. Set the border width to full, a height of, I think we went with 300 pixels. Click save. It's a little hard to see, so we'll go background of amber 300, go rounded large. Okay. Go ahead and set this to column span 1. I think I am good with that. I think so. Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I enjoy it, and I appreciate the support. Genuinely do. Yep. Thank you so much. I don't know if I like that. Let's go with justify center. Oh, help if I put item center. Let's change this to 200 maybe. Set the text to white. Font bold. Text large. And we'll say on hover, let's make the background amber 400, hover, text, neutral, 800, save, there we go, cursor, pointer, actually I think I prefer the text to be neutral. Let's go 600. Yeah, I like that a little better. Okay, so we're good there. Yep. Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Postgres via using Prisma, Nextjs, and Vercel. Yep, just keeping it simple. Yep. It's been a while, so figured I'll do something quick and easy, but still fun to build, if you will. Yep. Alright, so let's go ahead and test out the ability to add a column. And the reason we don't have to use a form, just to kind of explain this a little bit, is because we're setting the value to new column. So every column that we create, it's going to have a value of new column, and then we're going to use the updated task that we haven't created just yet. Well, column, excuse me, I keep thinking of task before columns. Updated column to give us the ability to change the name of that column. So that's basically how we're doing it. So once we click this button, what should happen, we should be able to check Prisma, and we should have a new column, as long as I didn't make any typos or errors along the way. That's basically what we're looking to achieve at this point with what we have set up. Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely. So let's test it out. And we'll just click add column. No errors in the terminal. I got a response back of post status of 200. That's a great sign. If we go to the Prisma Studio and just click on column, refresh the page, we see we have a column added with a title of new column created at listed there. Perfect. So now let's focus on displaying a column on screen. That's correct. You got it. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, just let me know where you stopping by from, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Absolutely, I am. I enjoy doing these. So if anything I can assist with, I'll be happy to. Otherwise, I will just keep coding. So let's go ahead and set up the ability to display the columns on screen. Yep. You know it. Yep. All right, so let's do this. Let's set up some props first. We'll go type props. is equal to columns, and then this will be column type, and we'll need to import the column, which we need to create. So we'll just go inside of components, we'll go column.tsx, and we'll just add the, well, I think I'll do a export default. So we'll go inside of this file, export default function column, and this is just to test this out, and we'll just return a div column 1 2 3. Click save. That's perfect. And we'll import, go back to the board.tsx file, and we'll import column from /column, and then we'll destructure the column type. Take care of that, and I know we need to set this up. Inside of this file, we'll add a export type of column type and set it equal to a ID, a string, which will be a string, a name, which will be a string, and task, which will be an array of tasks that we will create later on, but we don't have to worry about that one for right now. We'll just export this. Yes, sir. Just making sure everything's staying good here. Yep, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I don't like that orange color. I'm going to remove it. Make this background neutral. Yeah, that's better. And then I'll just change this to neutral. Oh, hold on, that's what we did. Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, it was driving me crazy. Alright, where were I? Inside of here, the column type. Okay, so let's go ahead and pass in inside of this function some curly braces, and we'll say column, and then we'll go column column type. There we go. And we'll just change this for right now to a section. We'll give it a little styling. We'll give it a class name. One second here. Parsons going to
Green Bay, yeah.
Green Bay?
Yeah, Packers. He's the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history.
What he getting?
Like a 4-year, $188 million.
Good grief.
I know, right?
That's crazy. Yeah, I wouldn't have paid him that kind of money either. I think that's silly, but I guess that's a lot of money for to be a guy that still had a middle of the road defense. But good for him though. I'm happy for him though.
Yeah.
But if he was trying to build a roster, that's a lot of money. Alright, sorry about that. So we'll just set the class name, give it a column span of 1, We'll set the height to 300 pixels. Give it border. Border will be neutral 200. We'll go rounded large, padding of 3. And I think that's enough for right now. So just so that we can have something on screen, I'm going to pass in column. Let's go div column dot name. All right, so now let's use this inside of the board.tsx file. What we'll do is use a simple method map to map over and display a column for each of the columns that we have in the database. So we know we'll need to use JavaScript for that. And we're going to pass in the column inside of the board. We'll go props so that it utilizes these props. And inside of this, we need to update it so that it is receiving those columns. So we'll go columns, and we're going to just pass in the columns that we get here. So if we refresh the page, we don't see anything just yet. But let's go ahead and map over the columns and display one of the column components for each column that is within the database. So we'll say columns.map. For each column, I'm just going to name it C, just to have something. Let's import or utilize this column that we imported. So we'll say column. Let's close it. We'll give it a key of C.id, and then we'll just pass in column C. Click save, and you see now we have immediately on screen a column being displayed with a title of new column. So that is working perfect. So we actually don't need to do anything else with the page.tsx. Everything is actually good with it. So we'll close that out for right now, and we'll begin to shift our focus to the other parts of the page. Well, I'm sorry, not the page.tsx, the board.tsx. We're going to still need this page a little bit. But let's go ahead and shift our focus to the column, because the board should be good. So within this column.tsx, we're going to have this, going to try to make this somewhat modular so we don't have to worry about having a bunch of code in this one file. So let's just go ahead and create a header to hold the column name. So inside of the components directory, let's add a file named column header.tsx. Within this file, this is just going to be where we're going to store the header for the column, so we don't have so much code in that one file, and it'll be a lot easier to read, load, etc. So we'll start by marking this file as use client. We're going to update or import the fi check, fi icon, React icon, excuse me, and we'll bring in trash. I think we'll use trash too. Then let's create a export default function. We're going to name it column header. Pass in the ID and name. And then we'll pass the ID as a string, the name as a string. And we'll add a return statement. For right now, we'll just go div, and within div, we'll have a value of name. And just to make sure, I'll pass in the ID as well, just for right now. Okay, so now let's bring this into the actual column so that we can have it on screen and just shift our focus to styling and bringing the functionality to the column. Yep, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for stopping by. I genuinely do. It is always appreciated. Thank you so much. All right. So we have the column header. Let's remove this div and we're going to import it. Import. This is coming from one directory up. So we'll go column header. And then we'll just bring it in within the section, column header, and within this one we need to pass in some information. The ID is going to be the column.header. The name, we'll need that as well. It's going to be column.name. And we can close this, click save, and as you can see we have the ID of the column, which should mirror the last 30148. If we go to the Prisma Studio and look up the ID, it is 148. The name is new column, and we see that listed there. So we see the information is being passed in properly as a prop. So great. Now we are ready to remove this ID and begin to style the header and add a little bit of functionality, but first we'll just focus on the styling. So we can add a class name to the div of flex, set the items to centered, and we'll go justify between and a gap of 1. This is going to be the top portion of this column, which will hold the title. We'll have a trash icon on the far right, and right next to it we'll have a check mark that will give us the ability to save the update that we are creating for our column. So I think we are at a good point now where we're ready to add the ability to update our column, which is a server action. So we'll go back to our column.actions file. And underneath get all, we'll add a new function, export async function. We're going to name this one update column and pass in form data, and we'll be using the form data object. And of course we'll go promise of void. There we go. In order to update it, we're going to need some information first. The first thing we want to capture is the actual ID. So we'll go const ID is equal to string, and this will be form data dot get. We want to get the ID, and we're going to pass that in as a string, or it could be a empty string, which it shouldn't be, but it could be. I got that in the wrong space. I see it already. Hold on. There we go. Not yelling at me. Perfect. Then we'll need to capture raw, and that's going to be coming from form data dot get, and we want to get the name. And then we'll go const name is equal to type of, which will be raw. The same syntax we had earlier with 3 equal signs. It should be a string, but just to make sure we don't get any white spaces, we'll go raw.trim or a empty string. If we do not get once we destructured and capture all the data that we're looking for, if we don't get a ID, if no ID or no name, we'll just return. Otherwise, we're going to say await prisma, gaining access to that prisma function that we created earlier. Then we want to first capture the column, which is the model, the schema that we're working with. And then we'll go with dot update. And we just want to update where the ID and the data is name. And that's all we need to do. And we can just go revalidate path. And everything is on the home page tool, so we'll just return there. So what we're going to do now is just pass in this function, update column, inside of the header, so that we have the ability to click on the input and update the name of the title. So let's just save this to get rid of the ID so we can see what's on screen a whole lot better. Okay. So let's remove this name. We'll clean this up a little bit and go with form. Inside of form, I'm going to bring in the method action, and I need to import the action I want to use. That one is going to be update column, and it should be coming from @lib/actions, and then we'll just pass in the update column function. We'll give it a class, a class name does outside of the form, that's why. So we'll go class name. This will be flex item centered. Give it a gap of 1 and set it to flex 1 so that it takes up any of the remaining space there. I can click save. I know we won't see anything just yet. So the things we need to pass in are 2. We need to pass in a ID, and we also need to pass in the name. So I don't want the ID visible. That won't be a good look. So for the input, we'll set the type to hidden. We'll give it a name of ID and a value of ID. Click save, and just to make sure it's working, I'll remove type for right now. Save, perfect. You see the ID. Underneath that input, let's add a div with a class name of flex1. We'll start with a input inside of this, then we'll add a name of name, a default value of, this will be name, and then we'll go class name, set the width to full. We'll go border, rounded, set the border to neutral, 200, we'll do 200 in this one. Click save, so now we see that on screen. We'll give a padding on the X of 3, on the Y of 1.5. It helps if you have the dash there. Perfect, so now you see it's beginning to style a little bit. We'll set the text to small, focus, outline, yes, FOCUS, outline of none, focus will be ring 2. And then we'll go focus, ring, neutral, 300. Let's go 200. Click save. So there we see the column input has a nice looking style to go along with it. Next, I want a check mark right next to it, which will represent save. So that will, we can go ahead and add that now. So underneath this div, we'll add a button. Inside of the button, I'm going to have a check mark, which we've already imported. So we'll go fi check. We'll give this a class name of text green 500 and set the type for this one. Well, actually, we don't have to. We'll just close it up. And I may need to put that inside of the note. That works perfectly just as is. Okay. Actually, I think I will move it a little cleaner there. Make sure this works inside the button. Yeah, that works. And I'm gonna add type submit to this just to be correct. So what should happen with this is I should be able to update this text inside of this column, the name of it, just by removing it, and we'll say live coding. Probably should have added a animation there. We may add one later. That way we can see it in a pending state, but I won't worry about it right now. But more importantly, let's make sure that it took. So I'm gonna refresh the page and it's still showing live coding. So that's a good sign. And if we go to Prisma, the studio, we see the name of it is now live coding. So just to be sure, we'll try it one more time. We'll go create live coding update. Click save. We'll click the check mark. Refresh the screen. It's still showing live coding update. Refresh Prisma, and it is perfect, showing the updated name for the column. So that's perfect. So the last function that we'll need to create within the column actions is the ability to delete a column. So inside of the update column, or excuse me, inside of the update column actions file, let's add a export async function. We're going to name this one delete column. We'll pass in form data. This is going to be representing the form data itself. And we'll go promise void. We'll go const ID is equal to string form data dot get. We're going to get the ID. We'll come outside of this function this time. Double question mark and then an empty string. And we'll say if no ID, just return. Otherwise, if we do have an ID, we'll go await prisma dot column dot delete where the ID is equal to the ID, and then we'll just go revalidate path to stay on screen. So we are now ready to bring in this function. We'll go back to the column header, and we can just add the trash icon right next to this check mark. So underneath the form, we'll add another form, and we're going to pass in the action method. Let's import the delete column action that we just created. Delete column, and that should be with the update column import, and we'll just pass that function to this action. And I don't think we need any styling for this. I am going to copy this input because we need the exact same syntax, the way this input is written out within this form. And then we can just add the button, and I'll go fi trash 2. Click save, so we see the trash icon listed there. And if I add a class name with a text of red 500, click save. We'll add the type of submit. And actually, I'm just going to add a hover state, but this really should be ready to work at this point. Hover, text, red, 600. Cursor pointer. Click save. Okay, so now if I click this trash icon, it should delete. So let's just click it to confirm. Perfect. Let's check Prisma. Perfect. So as you can see, the delete function is working. So we have a CRUD app with columns at this point. Let's just add another column to have something on screen. We'll name this to do CRUD app. Perfect. If we refresh, yep, it's really taken immediately. I probably should add, and we'll probably come back and add a loading animation. That way you can see it. But because we're using server actions and we're using revalidate path, it's actually updating immediately, almost real time, by just refreshing the data that's on the server and making sure that we're getting the most up-to-date information. So shout out to Nextjs for a cool feature within their framework. So now we are ready to add task, and I want the ability to add task down at the footer of this column. So we can go ahead and close out the column header, and we actually can close out the column actions file. We should be done with column header as well. Yep. So inside of our project, let's add a file inside of the components directory named column footer .tsx. This is going to be the bottom portion of the column, which is going to give us the ability to add a task. So at the top of this file, I'm just going to mark it as use client. I don't think I necessarily need to. I'm just going to mark it just in case. And we'll just create an export default function name column footer. I'm going to pass in a column ID, which will be a string. And we'll return, we'll just return a div with the column ID. Click save. Okay. Perfect. All right. And so with that, I think we're ready to bring it in. So we'll go to our column and just review. We have the column header, and then underneath that we're going to need the actual footer as well. So let's just go for right now. Yeah, for right now we'll go column footer, and that's just a quick little shortcut. If you begin to import it or bring it in, call it if you will, the IntelliSense within VS Code should recognize the clearest name match and suggest that as the next import. And then within the column footer, if we close this up, remember we need to pass in some information. We're just going to pass in the column ID, and that will be as column dot ID. We'll click save, and you can see that ID is listed right there. I think I'll go ahead and bring in task as well. So let's go ahead and do the exact same exercise. Oh, what's that? Let's go ahead and do the exact same exercise that we've done with the column actions by beginning to add the task actions. And we'll start with the ability to create a task and the ability to get all tasks. So inside of the lib directory, let's add a file named task actions .tsx. No, .ts. This is where we'll have the actions to help us create a task. We'll start with the use server directive at the top. We'll import prisma. That should be coming from, I think it was /prisma. Yep, /prisma. Then we'll import revalidate path. That's going to come from Nextjs15. Like I said, the first task that we're going to create is the ability to create a task. So we'll go export async function, create task, and that will get form data. It will be a promise of void. So in order to create a task, if you recall from the models, we basically need a couple things. We'll need a column ID that this task will be associated with. We'll also need the title that represents the name of the task that we're going to create. And then we'll need to also set the position of the actual task, which will be handy a little later on, but we'll talk through that in a moment. So let's begin by creating a const named column ID and setting it equal to string, and string will be form data dot get. We want to get that column ID, and just as we did before, double question marks or a empty string. Then we'll say const title is equal to string. This will be form data dot get title. And make sure we use the dot trim method at the end so we don't get any white space. And we'll just say if there isn't a column ID or a title, should I add that exclamation mark there? We're just going to say return. And for right now, all we want to do is have the ability to create a task. So we'll just say await prisma dot, we'll go prisma dot column, I'm sorry, prisma dot task dot create, and we're just going to create data. The data object will have a column ID, a title, a position. Actually, do I need position just yet? Let's see. Where is it? Yeah, okay, so the default is set to 0. Okay, so I will need it. Let me see, how do I want to do this? we'll just go. This shouldn't be position. Actually, I can just pass it through on the form. It can do it like that. So we'll just leave this as position is equal to 0. Alright, and then we can just go revalidate path, but make sure it's inside of the function. Revalidate the data on the home page. Perfect. So now let's begin to bring in this function and test it all out. So inside of the column footer, this is where we want to utilize it, and we can actually go ahead and remove this div and replace it with a form. It will have a action that we need to import. So at the top of this file underneath use client, we're just going to import create task, and that should be coming from @/lib/task actions. And we'll pass in the create task action. We'll give this a class name with a margin top of 3. We'll set the direction to flex. We'll go item centered. And we'll go gap of 2. Let's pass in a input with a type of hidden. We'll give it the name of column ID, which is going to be passed into this, and we'll set the value to column ID. Click save. Then we'll add the div, and we'll just get something on screen with a input, placeholder value of add a task. You see it there, it's perfect. Let's style this first. We'll go class name flex1. The input will get a name of title, a class name of width of full. We'll go rounded, set it to medium, border, and the border color will be neutral 200. We'll go text small, save, okay. Padding on the X of 3, I think is what we did. On the Y of 1.5. Yep. Let's get rid of that. We'll go focus ring. Then we'll say focus ring neutral 300. Okay. So we're almost finished with this one. And then outside of this div, we'll pass in we'll add a button. Plus icon. We'll import it from the icons. Close it. There, we see that there. And just to give this some styling, we'll go text color of green 600 and set the type to submit. Let's click save. Now if we, let's go back to the header. I'm just going to copy that. I should have made this say, we may come back and refactor this, and once we refactor it, yeah, we could take the exact same styling. We can reduce some of this code, redundant code that we have. It's always a good practice to do that anyway. So I'll be sure to come back and do that. Click save, and I mean, it's the same thing. And so now we get a consistent experience and it looks better that way. But yeah, we'll come back and make a reusable component with it so we're not repeating the same code, and be a lot cleaner. But for right now, we should have the ability to add a task. So let's test it out. So we'll say project setup, project setup. Okay, we've seen that it took. If we check the terminal, no errors, even though we didn't do a try catch block, but that's okay. So I shouldn't have even checked it. Close it out. So we did see it update momentarily by going away. So let's just check and see inside of Prisma if the task is there. Excuse me. So we'll click on the task model. We refreshed it. We see that we have project set up, and we have is done is set to false. The position is 0. Perfect. So let's go ahead and work on displaying that task on screen. So I think inside of the column, we'll need to add some additional text so that we can see the task inside of this column, and the add task button will be down at the bottom as the footer. So in between the header and the footer, this is where we're going to update the code and have the ability to add or display our task. So let's work on that now. Okay. Alright, so we'll add a div with a class name of margin top of 3. Go flex 1 so that it is taking up the maximum width. Overflow on the Y. We'll set the auto, and padding right we'll set to 1. So just to care for server-side rendering and the way and any potential hydration errors, I'm going to go, if it is not mounted, less care for it. We'll just wrap it in that, and we can get rid of this error by adding that. And I think I need to bring in some state. So at the top of this, we'll go use client, and then we'll import, we'll go React, use state. And this should be coming from React. There we go. We'll create a const. Yeah, a const name, which will be a use state. We'll name this, we got mounted, right? Mounted. And we'll go set mounted. It's going to be equal to use state, and the initial state of it is going to be false. So that's basically saying if it is not mounted, we want to do something. We want to make sure that it is mounted. That way we don't get any hydration errors. And then we'll say if we don't have any tasks, we want to display something, but we do have tasks, but I'm just going to care for it right now anyway. So instead of a fragment, we'll add in div. We'll give it a class name of space on the y of 2. And this is saying that inside of this, let's go ahead and bring in the task so that we can see it. But I think we need to create the function to get the task. So back in the task actions, let's go ahead and create an action that will get all tasks for us. So we will name this, how do I want to do this? Let me think here for a second. Thinking what makes the most sense in doing this. Yeah, as I know if let me see, I think I can just go in the column. Oh yeah. I'm thinking. Yeah, I'm thinking so. Mm-hmm. Why don't I do it like this? Why don't I say, yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way to render this without getting any hydration errors or anything, because this, I know with Next and me attempting and I'm eventually going to be doing a little bit more front end rendering, or client side rendering I should say, it can get a little tricky with the hydration errors, and I don't want to deal with that if I don't have to. So let's do it like this. I think what I'll do is we'll just add the ability to get the task inside of the column, but let me take about 5 minutes. Run to the restroom really quick. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. Bio break. Alright, so we have create task. I think I'll add the ability to get the task inside of the actual column. So let's go back to column actions, and where it reads get all columns in that particular function. Let's add the ability to also get the task associated with those columns. That way we don't have to create a separate function for it. So we already have order by. Let's just add include. Include task. This will be ordered by, create an array, is done. It's going to be ascending order, and then we'll also go ahead and bring in position, P-O-S, yep, position. That will be ascending order as well. So we don't have to create a separate function to get the task. We can just include it within this function, and that will take care of it for us. So now if we go to close, if we go to, we don't need the header. If we go to order footer either, nope, we can just go to this column. So this here, we want to go ahead and bring in the task, and I think the best way to do it at this point would just be to bring it in some form of state, and then we can loop through it and display it on screen. So we'll say inside of this function we'll go const task, and then this will be set task ks. It's going to be equal to use state, and this would be task, and we'll set it to initial. And I think with this task array we'll need to create a type, just as we did for the column title. So we'll go we'll say type task. It's going to be a object, of course, with a string, a title, which will be a string. We'll say is done. That's going to be a Boolean, true or false, and we'll set the position to number. Then in the column type, we can go ahead and bring in task, because we know we're adding that to the column, and that will be an array. And then now I just need to fix my syntax here. That's right, we don't need this. I-N-I-T-I-A-L. So I need to define this, of course, which I forgot to do. We're going to say const initial. It's going to be equal to use memo, which will be imported from React, and we just imported it there. And with this, we'll just create a quick function. We'll destructure the column, C-O-L-U-M-N. What we're looking to capture are the tasks within that column, and we're going to sort them in order of A and B, and then we'll say A dot position and we'll say b dot position. And we have use memo there. All right, perfect. And then we'll add up a comma, and underneath that we'll pass in column.task. Perfect. Then I also want to go ahead and make sure I care for the mounting. So we'll go ahead and import use effect. That's going to come from React. And with that, underneath the task, we'll say use effect. We'll say set mounted, pass in true, or an empty array. Click save. And then now inside of, if it is not mounted, inside of the div we have some conditional rendering, and what we basically want to do is display a message if there are no tasks, and then if there are tasks, then of course we'll go ahead and display those tasks on screen. So the first condition we'll care for are no tasks, so we'll say task.length is equal to 0. And if it is equal to 0, we want to show a message. This will be a p tag. We'll just say no task yet. And I'll just give it a little class, a little styling of text small, or extra small rather. And we'll say text neutral 600. But if we do have task, we'll say task dot map. For each of those items, we'll just name it task, or T, excuse me. And just for right now, I'm just going to pass something on screen just to make sure this is working. I think it's t.title. Let me give it a key of t.id. Click save. So we've seen it, but it disappeared. And I'm willing to bet I got something off with my mounting. Let me see something. Here we go. Because of the way I have it set up, let's add a div. T.title. Actually, let's do this. It can be the exact same thing. There we go. So basically, you can see it on screen listed right here. So perfect. I think what we'll do next is go ahead and shift our focus to adding a task item so you can see it, and then I'll work on the ability to drag and drop next. So let me do that. Let me charge this. Let me grab my charger really quick. Oh, what did you miss? Oh, yes, I'm back. Not much, just coding a full stack app using the latest version of Next, Postgres as the ORM, Prisma as the ORM, and Postgres as the database. Forgive me. But yeah, thank you for showing some love. I genuinely appreciate it. Yes, ma'am. All right, let's pick back up where we left off. So we can see the task now on screen. So what I want to do next is create a task item that will allow us to see the task in a more organized way, if you will, and also have the ability to delete and update the task. So first, I think we will start by creating the actions that we'll need for that particular component. So if we go back to task actions, what do I want to name this? So I think first we'll do, because we're going to need a few things for the updating. So I think I'll do the delete first. So we'll go export async function delete task. I'm going to pass in some form data. And this will be promise void. We'll pass in a const with an ID of string form data dot get. Get the ID. Make sure we don't get an empty string. And if there's no ID, we'll just return. And we'll go await prisma dot task dot delete. Yep. Where the IDs match. And we'll just use revalidate path to refresh the data. So I'm gonna need a couple functions in this file to update, if you will. I think where I'll start is updating the actual name or the title. So we'll create a function name export async function. This will be rename task, and we'll go form data, and we know what we're passing in using the form data object. Promise void, and we can actually copy the ID because that we're going to need that to rename the task. That's going to identify the task that needs to be renamed. Then we'll need to capture the title, so we'll go const title is equal to string and this will be form data dot get. We need to get the title. This will be dot trim to make sure we don't get any white space. And we'll say if we don't get the title, I'm sorry, if we don't get the ID first or the title, I guess it didn't really matter, or no title, then we'll just go return. Otherwise, we'll go await prisma dot task. So that's the model that we'll be working with, and we'll go with updates. Dot update. We'll pass in where the, of course, ID. Then we'll go data. The data is title. And then after that, we can go revalidate path. And we're revalidating the data on this page. So this is, we have the two actions to give us the ability to delete a task, rename a task. We'll also add the ability to toggle is done, but we're going to do that later. But for right now, we'll focus on this. So, great question, man. Asant, and my apologies if I mispronounced your name, brother. But basically, revalidate paths allows it updates the data from the server, it refreshes it. So, because I'm using server actions, anytime I make a call to that function, it's going to revalidate the data on the server, which is essentially the same thing as a page refresh. It just gives the feel of a real-time update versus refreshing the page by using some form of JavaScript or redirecting the user and giving a page reload, where revalidate path is basically going to check the server. So like if I were to say I have a task right now that says project setup, we'll say layout setup next, layout setup, and we'll hit this plus mark. Notice that it basically just passed the data in without refreshing it. But if I were to refresh the page, you can see that data listed there. The reason why it's doing that is because I'm using client-side interactivity with use client, and I am caring for any hydration errors. But I guess a better way to look at it would be, you see how I click add column and a new column immediately was created? That's basically what revalidating path is doing. It's checking the server for the latest updates without a hard reset. And if I click delete, you're going to notice that it just goes away without a page refresh. Delete, bam, it's gone. Now to kind of care for that delay, you should use suspense, and I may add it in later, but that's basically what revalidate path is. Thanks for the question, my brother. Hope that made sense. All right, so the two actions that I have are to delete the task and rename. We're going to add a couple more actions in a moment, but this is going to be enough to get us what we want to get accomplished at this point. Perfect. So now we can go back to the column, and I think what we are ready to do now is just create a task item component so that we're not having to pass in a bunch of code in these two particular fields. I'm just going to create a component. So inside of the components directory, we'll add a file named task item.tsx. And this is what we'll be using to display the data from the task so that it's a lot more organized and we can pass in some more functionality. So we'll start by marking this as use client. And I want to import the functions that we just created. So we'll go import delete task. That's going to come from @/lib/task actions. And then we'll go with, this will be fine for right now. Yeah, this will work. Now let's create a export default function, and we're going to name it task item. We're going to pass in task, which will be task or task. We'll add return statement just to return something on screen. We'll go class name, padding on the X of 2, on the Y of 2. Text will be set to small, flex, item centered, and justify between. Just to see what we have, we'll go task.title. Click save so we know we're getting the error there. That's fine for now. Now let's go ahead and import this inside of the column. So we'll go to the column.tsx at the top. We're going to import task item. Oh, what am I doing? Task item dot slash task dash item. Now I'm just going to replace this div with the task item, and I need to pass in the key, which is going to be t.id. Remember, for each of those, the T represents the task, and then we know we need to pass in task, which will be a T. Click save, and then notice that we now have the task with a little more padding, a little more organized. That is because we have it within this view. And I think I need to put this I'm gonna come back to that in just a second. But for right now, let's go ahead and create the type to get rid of that error. So we'll say type task is equal to a ID, which will be a string, a title, which will be a string, is done, which will be a boolean, and position, which will be a number. There we go. And I know we haven't created all of these just yet, but we will get to them. How do we want to do this? Let's remove this title, and we will add a span with a class name of, this will be dynamic. So we'll go task.isDone, question mark. If it is done, we're going to use line through just to indicate that the task is done. And we'll say task line through. And we'll also set the opacity to 60. Or we want it to be just as it normally would be. And we'll just pass in task.title right here. I'm not going to add any more styling to it. Perfect. So we're going to see the task name. And if we mark the indicator as done, it's going to add a line through right there. And we haven't created that function just yet. We're going to create it in a moment. But until then, underneath this span, let's add a div with a class name of flex, item centered, a gap of 0.5. I'll tell you what, let's go ahead. I'll add the form action to delete first. So we'll say form. In the form, we'll add a action. The action will be delete task. We know we need a input with the type of hidden. We'll set the name to ID, and the value will be task.id. Click save, and just to make sure this is working, we'll remove hidden. Perfect. We see the ID listed there. Click save. and then we'll add a button. Let me import the trash icon. Import fi trash 2, and that's going to come from React icons, and of course it's the fi subset of it. Inside of the button, just going to add the fi trash icon. Click save, and we see that there. Now in the button, we'll give it a class name with a padding of 1. We'll set the text to red 500. On hover, we'll set the text to red 600. We'll set the type to submit. Click save. Now what should happen is if we click this trash icon, layout should go away. Let's try it. The reason this given that behavior is because I have this set on client side rendering. We may go back in and change that. I just want to get it working. I know we get some hydration errors, so we'll play with that for right now. But the important thing is it did delete the layout task. And if we go to our Prisma Studio, we no longer see it, and we'll just add it back because we do have to complete the layout. So we'll say layout setup, added it, refresh, and it is back. Perfect. All right, and I think what I want now is to add an icon to toggle if this task is complete. So we'll go back to the task actions, that file that has all those functions, and let's go ahead and create a task or function that gives us the ability to toggle if that action is, if the task is complete or not. So we'll just create a, move this up, export async function. We'll name this toggle, T-O-G-G-L-E, task, pass in form data, promise, void. We'll grab this const ID. Then we'll say const is done. I'll name it raw so I don't get it confused. Set it equal to string form data dot get. We want to get is done. If we don't get a ID, we're just going to return. Otherwise, we'll say const is done is equal to is done raw, which is the name of that variable const that we just created. Set to true. We'll go await prisma dot task dot update, where the ID and the data that we're looking for is done. We'll say not is done. We use revalidate path to revalidate the data. Click save. Okay, now we'll go back to the task item and let's import it. At the top, we already have delete task. We'll go, the name of that was toggle task, so we'll just bring in toggle task from that exact same file. And now we just want to add a form to give us the ability to update the actual state of is done. So underneath, or excuse me, inside of this div, right above the other form, we're going to add a new form. It will get a action of toggle task. We'll need to pass in the ID, be hidden. Then we'll add a new input with a type of hidden as well. The name of this one is going to be is done. The value will be string task.isDone. Let's go ahead and close this. And we'll have a button inside of this form. I think for this one, I'm just going to have a check circle, and we'll use the FI icons for that one. Is fine. So at the top, we'll just go ahead and bring in FI checked, check circle. Click save, and then just so we can see something on screen for right now, I know we'll need to update it a little bit. We'll just go FI check circle, close it, click save. And there, you see it right there on screen. So let's add some more information so we can test this out. The type for this is going to be set to submit. And we'll add a class name with a padding of 1. We'll go rounded. Text will be neutral 600. And on hover, we'll set the text to neutral 900. Click save. Alright, that looks pretty good. So now let's care for the state in the event, or let's care for it being updated in the event that we mark it as done or not done. So inside of the button, let's add a title. And we'll say task.isDone. If it is done with the question mark, we're going to say mark as not done or mark as done. Got something wrong somewhere. I'm in the button. Class name. Oh. There. Sorry about that. And then we'll just need to update the circle so that we can visually see it on screen. So we'll just give this a class name, and we'll set it to actually we need to dynamically pass this. We'll set this to task.isDone. Set the opacity to 100. Or we'll make the opacity 40. Let's go ahead and paste this in, save the file. I think this is ready to test out. So what should happen is we should get a line through the name of the project or the name of the task, and this should, the opacity of this should change. So let's try it out. So we'll click it, update the page, and as you can see, we have a line through, and we also have the task, the is done button is a little more pronounced on screen, and this is marked as not done. How about we change that? As not done, marked as done, marked as not done. Refresh. Yep, mark is done. And if I click it again, refresh the screen, there, now we see it is no longer checked and we no longer have a line through. So that's perfect. I do want to update this task item to be listed here. And we can remove this and replace it with this. I guess we can't. So let me see. Why don't I add? You know what? Bring it back. I took too much off. Let's remove this and replace it with this. Alright, it still don't like it. So this should be, let me see. When I look at it, let me try this. Wonder why it's giving me this error. Let me see something here. I have task.map. You know what? I could change the syntax because I'm passing it as a prop. I think it was this one. How about I just go all of this, all of you along. Alright, we'll say task.map, and we should just be able to say task item with a key of t.id, and we'll pass in task as t, close it off. Okay, so I think I had one too many quotation marks there before, but it's all good. We're good now. So that is going to care for the task. So then the last thing I want to do is add the ability to update the positions of these tasks. And the way I want to update them is by adding the ability to drag and drop them within this column. I think I want to change the height of this too. Let me see something. I'll come back to it. But for right now, let's do this. Yes, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a while, but you know, I genuinely enjoy doing this. I just don't get to do it as much as I would like, but it's all good. One day, I have the bandwidth to be a tad more consistent, but it's something I thoroughly enjoy doing, and I hope I provide some value back to the community as the community provided value to me. Yep. That's exactly right. So what I'm going to do is I just want to use a soft package or light package to kind of help with the drag and drop functionality. And let me, what's the name of this? Sortable. Alright, we're going to need I know we're going to need the core kit. We will need at dnd-kit sortable, sortable, and then we'll need at dnd dash kit slash modifiers. I think that's all we're going to need. Go ahead and install. We can always install more, and I know it will absolutely yell at us if I left something off, so I'm not worried about it too much right now. Alright, perfect. So that is now installed. Let's go ahead, and I think the first thing I want to do is set up let's update the information within the column first. So I'm just going to first bring in a few imports so that we'll have access to them. So we'll say import, and this is going to come from at dnd core. We're going to need the dnd context, the drag end event, the keyboard sensor, we'll add that, the pointer sensor, use sensor, and use sensors. There we go. I think that would be it. I'll also need to add some state so that we can see when the task will be finished and the position will be updated. So we'll add a const, and I think for this one we'll name it const is pending, and we'll go start transition. This is going to come from use transition, and you can actually just hit tab to import it, and just be sure to call it. That's going to come from React. And then the last thing I'll need to do before we begin to set up the wrap, the columns, is just create a function that will handle the drag event. So we'll go function, and I'll move this up, on drag end. We're going to pass in event because it will be listening for it. It's going to be listening for the drag end event. Inside of the curly braces, we want to destructure active and over, which is going to be coming from event. And we'll say if we don't have over or a active.id doesn't, or if it does equal to over.id, we just want to return. Otherwise, we'll create a const named old index and set it equal to task.find index. We'll be looking for the t. Well, we'll be naming each one t, and we'll say t.id is going to be equal to the active.id, and then we'll say const new index will be task.find index. We'll be looking for, or we'll name it t, and then with that we'll say t.id is going to be equal to over.id. That's right. Yep. Exactly right. Then we'll say if the old index is equal to -1 or the new index is equal to -1, we just want to return. Otherwise, we'll create a const named next, and we'll set it equal to array move, which is coming from at dnd-kit/sortable. And with the array move, we want to be able to move the task, the old index, and the new index. That's what we're going to pass in. And we'll say set task. We'll call that state. We'll set it, we'll pass in next to it because that will be what we'll be doing with the task. Then we'll create a const name. Come on, baby. Const name order IDs and set it equal to next.map. And we'll say t.index. No, t.id, I'm tripping. t.id. And we want to start the transition at this point so we can show that state, and we'll be able to destructure, I think, pending from start transition. But this will be a asynchronous request. And we'll go await reorder task in column, and we'll pass in the column.id and the order IDs. And we have not created the function just yet. We're going to create it in the task actions. That'll be the last function that we'll need to create. So we can go ahead and create that function now. So within the file name task actions, we're just going to create a export asynchronous function just to make sure we get it right. I'm just going to copy it. Name export async function. I'm just going to paste in the name. And with this one, we know we're going to need to, let me fix this syntax. Promise void. But inside of it, we need to pass in the information that we just seen. We know we're going to pass in the column ID, which is going to be a string. We're going to pass in the order IDs, which will be a string, but that will be an array. Because we know we'll have more than one ID, so we're going to just store it in an array. Okay, and inside of this, we'll just need to do some small housekeeping, just to say if we don't get a column ID or the array dot is array order IDs, if we don't get that, forgot about that, or we don't get the, or if the order.ids length is equal to 0, we just want to return. This is just basically saying if we don't get anything, we just want to return to say, hey, we didn't get anything. But if we do, we'll say await prisma dot $transaction. It's a method from Prisma. Let's say order IDs dot map. We'll map the ID. Well, we'll pass in the ID and the index, excuse me. And we'll go promise. Let's bring that down so you see it a little better, and this up. Prisma, excuse me, promise dot task dot update. We want to update where the ID is equal to ID and data is equal to position index. Now we just need to import this into this file so that error goes away, and that is going to be with the actions, and I don't have one imported yet. So we'll go import, reorder, task and column, click save. Now within this function, we are ready to bring in some additional imports or utilize, the items or functionality that we brought in from D&D. So within this column, I think we'll update the second portion here, and we can just delete this for right now. We're going to bring in D&D context, sortable context, and we're going to need to pass in a couple things. Within the D&D, we're going to pass in the sensors, so we have access to sensors. And we'll go on drag in. We'll pass in on drag in. This is something. Why am I getting an error with sensors? Did I not put in sensors? You know what, I think I need to, I'm going to need to destructure them out of use sensor and use sensors. So let me do this. Above, in between use effect and the on drag in, we're going to create a const named sensors, and set it equal to use sensor. We'll say use sensor. We'll be using the pointer sensor, which will be, and we'll also pass in, I think it is activation sensor or activation constraint. And with that, we'll set the distance to 6. And we'll use sensor and pass in keyboard sensor. Sensor dot reduce is not a see something. 1 second. SORS. Expect the site function properties, which is the crud here. Props. Pass this in strategy, vertical. This sort of strategy, okay? And we'll say task dot length is equal to 0. We'll set p tag no task yet. It's a class name text of extra small. And set the color to neutral 500. For this one, we'll say task dot map. Each one will show a T. And for right now, I'm just going to show T.title. But I need to fix this. So this will be, first I'll go here, we'll go items, task.map, T.id, takes care of that. Now this sensor thing, I'm not going crazy. Sensor is equal to use sensor, and then when we use the sensor, the pointer sensor, sensors that reduce is not a function. This is use sensors. That might have been a problem. And we'll go use sensor. This will be the pointer sensor. Activation constraint. Set the distance to 6. Yep, that was my issue. And then use sensor. Will be the keyboard sensor. Key prop for sortable context. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Sortable context. And we need a key right here, I bet. Let me go div and add another div. And let's go key t.id. Yep, there you go. And as you can see, we see the task items listed there. So that is absolutely perfect. And then now I think what we'll do next is just create a separate customizable, or not customizable, a separate file that's going to hold the task items to actually sort. So instead of using this exact same one, I'm going to create a secondary one. But you know what? Before I leave this file to wrap it up, let's go ahead and add in is pending, which is coming from the use transition hook. And we'll say if it is pending, where the and signs, and we'll add a p tag saving task order, Oh, this p tag, I'm going to give it some styling with a class name, a margin top of 1. We'll set the text to 10 pixels. We'll make the text color neutral 400. Alright, so now I'll go ahead and shift my focus to creating a different task item, a sortable one, and we'll just create it from scratch versus updating the one we already have. So in the components directory, add a file named sortable task -item.tsx. At the top of this file, go ahead and mark it as use client. Create a export default function. We'll name it sortable task item. We're going to pass in the task, and we'll be looking for a task, and I have not created it just yet, but we will. And then for now, we'll just return a div, and inside of this div, I think we'll just return task.title. So now let's create this type. That will be type task, and set it equal to the ID, the object, and we'll start with the ID, which will be a string. The title, which will be a string, is done is a boolean, and position is a number. Perfect. So we'll need a few little things in this to get us going. First is going to be, we're going to import use sortables. Sortable, so I'll add an S. And that's going to be coming from at dnd-kit/sortable. We'll import CSS. That should be coming from the DND kit utilities. DND kit. Forgot to add at dnd-kit/utilities. That's what it's UTILITIES. There we go. I think I will just use the task item to make it easier on us. Task item, and then last but not least, a icon that we'll use to drag the item. This is going to be a BS grip vertical. This is going to come from React icon /BS. Okay, so inside of this function, first I want to create a const, and we're going to set this equal to use sortable, and we know we'll need to pass in the ID and the task.id. I forgot the curly braces there. And what we want to capture from this is our attributes, listeners, set, node reference, transform, transition, is dragging, and that's it. That should be it. And I'm going to add some custom styling, or just some styling to it rather. So I'll create a const named style and set it equal to, which will be an object. So we know we'll do the curly braces. We'll go transform, which will be CSS, and we'll use the .transform property to string, and then we'll pass in transform. We'll then do transition, and we'll also say opacity, ACITY. It's going to be is dragging. If so, we'll just pass in the numbers of 0.6 or 1. And that's just the range of where we can actually drag. We'll remove this div and replace it with a new div. Excuse me. Inside of this, we'll give it a reference. A ref of set node rep, and the style will be style. And all of this comes from the documentation. If it is something that you'd like for me to kind of go over and walk through a little slower, let me know. I'll be happy to. Otherwise, I will keep pushing. Just read the documentation. Go flex, set the items to center. This is just styling the actual card itself. And we'll set the gap to 2 for now, but we could change it. And then now I want to create the little drag handler. So we'll go button, and we'll bring in the BS grip vertical. And I'll add that functionality in a moment. Then outside of that button, we'll add a div, and then we'll bring in the task item. And we're going to pass in task. That's task, and we'll close it out for right now. Set this div to flex1. Let's go ahead and bring this in so we can get something on screen. So if we go back to the column.tsx file where we have the mapping to show the name, let's just remove this code and we'll replace it with task.map. For each one, we'll name it T. And then I'm just going to take the shorthand to import sortable task item. We'll pass in the key, which will be t.id, and then we'll pass in the task, which will represent T. And then if we close that off, you see we have on screen a vertical icon, the name of the task, the toggle if it's done or not, and the trash can to delete it. So that's perfect. Now let's go back to the sortable task item, and we just need to add a little bit more code and we will be all set. Inside of the button, we'll pass in a class name first. We'll say hover. We'll set the background to neutral 50. When we use the cursor, we're going to use the cursor grab because we want to be able to grab it. And then if it is active, we'll say cursor SOR grabbing. Then inside of the button, we'll destructure attributes. And we'll also destructure listeners. Click save. And if this would be good now. Yep. There we go. We see saving the task order. And if we refresh the page, did I have project? Wait a minute. We'll put layout at the top. If I refresh, okay, layout remains at the top. Perfect. All right, and then let's just add one more task to test it out. We'll say server actions. We'll add it. We see the new item listed there, server actions. If I want to move that to the bottom, we've seen it saying that it was saving, and the order should be layout, project, server actions. If we refresh the page, it is layout, project, server actions. And if we click the icon to represent we've completed server actions, we get the line through server actions and the better indicator of the icon, so that is working. So with that, we are all set. I hope you enjoyed this simple CRUD server action application using Next and Prisma and Postgres. Just added in the ability to drag and drop the task within a column. If you enjoyed it, feel free to give me a like and also consider subscribing. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one.